Hey besties, welcome back. Grab what's ever in your mug. Coffee, tea, maybe a little nip of something stronger. I'm not here to judge. It's March. And honestly, how this year has played out, same. Come sit down and take a breath. So like I said, it's March. The holidays are a distant memory now. And that new year, new me energy has fully died the death it always dies by the end of February. And all I can say is, finally. Side note, if you need workout equipment, usually now's the time to check the clearance section. Meanwhile, Mother Nature's out here having hot flashes, apparently. She can't decide what temperature she wants to commit to. So it's a lot of layers on, layers off. Is it a coat day? A sandal day? Nobody knows. Nobody. In the world, well, the world has lost its mind. Which, honestly, at this point is like, okay, it's a Tuesday. Before we get into all that, though, I want to say thank you. Like a real, actual, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I checked my analytics. I have dinged in 31 countries. And across my networks, we have over 100 followers from all the different platforms added together. So who knew that many people wanted to sit down and have coffee with me? I'm glad you enjoy shooting the shit. I genuinely did not see that coming when I sat down at this mic for the first time. And I don't take any of you granted for a single second. So there is always a chair here for you, along with a supportive, probably over-caffeinated friend. Always. Okay, so today we are talking about something I find equally parts fascinating and exhausting. It's that time-honored tradition of every single generation blaming the one that came up behind them for ruining everything. Spoiler alert, they're not. They never were. And honestly, the other side of that coin is the same, because we always look back at the older generations and want to blame them for not having, I don't know, the foresight to know how their choices would affect the future. All of us are blaming the forest for the leaves, not the trees. Nobody's getting out of this one clean, my friends. So top off your cup and let's get into it. So let's start with this talk about the idea that the younger generation is destroying our society. It's not the breaking news they try to make it sound like. It's not even a modern problem or a new one. And it's not unique to any one era. In fact, it's one of the most consistent, boring, repeatable patterns in all of human history. It's like that one item that everyone's crocheting at the same time. You've seen it 1,000 times, and somebody's always acting like they're the one that invented it. Every single generation inherits a panic story about the one coming up behind them. And then they turn around and hand that panic story to the next one. Rinse, repeat, forever and ever. Regifting at its finest. So let's talk about the timeline of this absurdity, because I need you to feel the full weight of how ridiculous this cycle is. So if you think back to the 50s, there was Elvis Presley. The man shook his hips on television and people acted like civilization was ending. Literally. Parents were writing letters. In churches, women were clutching their pearls. Side note, that's actually where the saying comes from. And television networks were filming him from the waist up. Because apparently, if you gyrate your hips a little bit, everyone's going to start having sex on the sidewalk. It's the hips, y'all. The hips were going to destroy America. Little did they know about twerking that would be coming up in the future. Then we moved to the 70s and 80s. And now it's rock music. AC/DC, Ozzy Osbourne, Kiss, Devil Worship, demon summoning. The PMRC, which is the Parents Music Resource Center, literally held congressional hearings, United States congressional hearings about rock music. Because apparently the Senate had nothing else at the time that was worth their attention. Moving on, then the scapegoat becomes rap. Naughty by Nature, Tupac, Eminem, violent lyrics are turning our kids into criminals. And then Columbine happened, which is, I was in school at the time. It was one of the most horrific tragedies in this country's history. But instead of looking at mental health, access to weapons, instead of sitting in the discomfort of the real conversation that needed to happen, well, they went looking for that generation scapegoat because that's easier. It's always easier, and it's usually wrong. Then we get into the video games. Grand Theft Auto is apparently a murder simulator, and our children cannot be trusted to understand the difference between fantasy and reality. Which, if that is generally your concern about your kid, that feels like it should be a parenting conversation more than an RPG conversation. Just saying. Maybe sit and think about it for a minute. And then we have, in 2010, social media. Facebook is destroying democracy. Instagram is destroying self-esteem. Now, I will give this one a little more grace because there's some real truth buried in there. Living your life in comparison is real. People only posting the best is real. But it's easy to take a very real concern and throw it into an echo chamber. Crank up the volume, and suddenly it's the apocalypse in surround sound. Which, funny enough, is exactly how this always plays out. And now, TikTok's rotting our brains, and AI is going to end humanity. And can we sit with the irony here for a second? The people who spent the 90s convinced that rap music was turning kids violent are the ones on TikTok doing little dances. The people who said video games were going to make an entire generation unable to function in society are now absolutely glued to Candy Crush. Just want to acknowledge that a little bit. So this is the question I want to hang out over this whole episode. What if the panic was really never about the thing? What if it's always about the change itself? The fact that it's no better or worse, it's just different. All right, now for the segment I hope some of you enjoy. All of you enjoy. Stitch happens. This is going to be another one back into my childhood. So when I was in elementary school, one of the times my mom did work, she would drop me and my little brother off at my grandmother's house. And this was my oldest grandmother. I've talked about her before, the one that grew up during the Depression, which is important context for basically most of the story. She was tough and she was resourceful. She had survived actual hardship that in ways as a child and even as an adult I could not comprehend. She was also semi-deaf. So one winter we had this massive snowstorm, and I'm not talking, it's a little slippery out there snowstorm. I'm talking knee deep, the world has been swallowed by a blizzard snowstorm. And her apartment was down the road from my school. So there was no bus. You had to walk, which means you were getting there by your own steam. She got me all bundled up and sent me walking to school in knee-deep snow. Because in her head, school was absolutely, definitely happening today. There was no reason for it to be canceled at all. Yeah, I trudged through that snow. It's like a full leg day with the amount I had to push through. And then, I shivered the entire way. Talk about gyrating. I finally walk up to the school doors and there is a sign taped to them. No school today. So after I stood there staring for a few minutes, not believing what I was actually seeing, I turned around and I walked all the way back in the snow, which was still knee deep because it did not magically melt, while I was staring at the sign, wondering how this became my life. So I walked back in the door, soaking wet, absolutely frozen. My grandmother looks at me and goes, "Why did you come back?" And before I could even answer, her boyfriend comes from around the corner and says, and I quote, "I can't believe you sent her. I told you this morning, it was on the radio, school was closed today." She missed it because she couldn't hear it. Or him, apparently. Now, she wasn't wrong to use the tool she had. Okay, well, I mean a little, because she refused to wear her hearing aid. But the radio and the TV were how you found out school was closed. That was the whole system. The school would send you home at the beginning of the year with a paper that said, "Watch or listen to these stations for school closures." You didn't get a text. There was no app. There was no notifications buzzing in your pocket. You watched the TV and hope your school's name scrolled across the bottom of the screen before you had to leave. Your kids will never know that anxiety. My kids do online school, so short of a power outage or internet, they always have school. And their friends who go to school in person, well, there's app notifications or it's all over social media, usually the night before, a lot of times. And I caught myself the other day starting with, you guys are lucky you don't have to go out. But then I stopped because, yeah, they don't have to walk to school in knee-deep snow to find out it's closed. But it's not like a character flaw. It's just progress. My grandmother wasn't trying to make my life hard. She was working with what she knew. And I'm not trying to make my kids' lives harder by romanticizing a system that was generally just worse. The notifications are better. Online school means they always have access when they need it. Knee-deep snow walking was not building my character. I was just cold, wet, and gross. It didn't make me a better person. It just gave me a cold. A sociologist named Stanley Cohen coined the term moral panic. And he actually mapped out an entire formula. And that formula has not changed. Not once. In 50 years. Something new emerges. Music, technology, a subculture. Pick your favorite. Or better yet, if you have kids, pick what they're into. Because that's who latches on to the thing. Henceforth, the generation thing was going to be called the thing. A threat gets identified and almost always ties to young people or outcasts. And that part is not accident. That's how the system is designed. And then the media picks it up. And it's very important to note when it comes to the media, it's not always what you say, but how you say it. You dress it up in the language of whoever you're trying to reach. Make it feel personal, urgent, and scary. And suddenly, the thing that was just a thing becomes a moral, life-ending crisis. And then, of course, the politicians jump on the bandwagon. And honestly, that's what kills me every single time. Because the more you tell kids not to do something, the more they're going to do it. Like, when I bought CDs, every parental advisory sticker that ever existed was basically free advertising. I knew what music was good by which ones the adults didn't want me to listen to. That's how it works. And somehow, adults are still surprised by this. And then, eventually always, the thing turns out to be fine. Because every generation is going to have a thing. We change. We grow. We all want to scare our parents a little. Like, that's part of the fun of being young. It's always been. But the part we really need to sit with, the panic is almost never about the thing. It's about the who. The danger narrative almost always has a target. It's always an us versus them. It's just dressed up in language that makes it look like it's about saving something and not targeting someone. And the uncomfortable part, most of us have been on both sides of this. We've been scapegoated and we've done the scapegoating. because it becomes automatic. We absorb it, then we repeat it without even realizing. We go from being a product of the system to a part of it. The machine that makes the cog eventually becomes part of the machine. The fear is real, even when the threat isn't. Change is disorienting. Watching the world shift away from something familiar and safe, well, that's genuinely hard. That's just being human. The question isn't whether we feel it. The question is what we decide to do with it. Because someone has to be the one to dig in their heel so the blame game doesn't have to keep going. But in order for that to happen, somebody actually has to choose stopping it. All right, besties, Brews News. As always, everything that I'm sharing is current as of March 4th, 6:45 a.m. Because the news moves fast and I want you to know exactly what I'm working with. As always, we're going to start with our Epstein update because these women deserve for us to keep talking about it. So quick recap. Andrew and Mandelson were arrested in the UK. Wexler had a hot mic deposition. Bondi had a disaster testimony. And there's been a wave of spending more time with family departures. So here's what's new. Former Prince Andrew has been released under investigation. So he's not charged, but he's not cleared. And the King Charles has said the family will cooperate and the law must take its course. He's the first Windsor in 379 years to be arrested. The academic fallout is accelerating. Larry Summers has officially out at Harvard, along with Richard Axel, resigned from his Columbia position this week. Thomas Pritzker stepped down from the Hyatt hotel chain with a statement about terrible judgment that somehow forgot to mention the 2018 email where he helped plan a Southeast Asia trip specifically to find women for Epstein. Funny how that part didn't make it into the public statement. Bill Gates apologized to his foundation staff. Kimball Musk, yes, Elon's brother, resigned from the Burning Man board. He didn't get a pass because of his last name. And then there's the Clintons. Both Hillary and Bill were deposed separately by the House Oversight Committee. The videos have dropped. I know you can see them on Midas Touch. Each deposition ran about 4.5 hours. Hillary says she has no recollection of meeting or speaking with Epstein. Bill says he met him in 2002, introduced by, wait for it, Larry Summers. Describing the relationship as cordial, he said he cut ties before the 2008 conviction and acknowledged flying on Epstein's plane for Clinton Foundation work. Both depositions were described as heavy on the political posturing and light on actual significant new information. So make of that what you will. But the big picture is this. There's arrests in the UK, criminal charges in Norway, resignations everywhere, and this week the DOJ announced that its review is complete and there will be no further prosecutions expected. Not one. The gap between what's happening abroad and what's happening here needs to be pointed out until they do something about it. And another note I want you to watch closely. Senator Wyden sent the DEA a formal letter demanding answers about Operation Chain Reaction, which was a 2015 investigation into Epstein and 14 co-conspirators for drug trafficking and money laundering that was quietly shut down. Wyden stated in his letter that he's concerned the investigation may have been terminated during the first Trump administration to shield the individuals involved. The deadline he gave for answers is March 13th. So this has the potential to be something major. So we're going to watch this space. For my second story, I want to give you a quick personal disclosure. I do use an AI tool. It helps me organize, it helps me research, and it kind of keeps my brain going from like 15 directions at once because I can be very, oh, look, a squirrel while I'm working on the show. AI doesn't write it. No AI has this much, oh my God, this shit again, personality. But I use it as a research and organizing tool. I use the one made by Anthropic. I used to use ChatGPT. And now I'm going to tell you why I switched. Anthropic had a Pentagon contract with 2 hard limits built in. No mass domestic surveillance of Americans, no autonomous weapons. The Department of Defense, said remove those limits. Anthropic said no. They quickly got labeled as a supply chain risk, a designation previously only ever used for foreign adversaries. And the Trump ordered all federal agencies to drop them immediately. Same day, hours later, Sam Altman announced ChatGPT had struck a deal with the Department of War. He says they have safeguards too. People are skeptical, given that OpenAI had quietly removed those exact prohibitions from their own policies last year. Altman has since admitted he shouldn't have rushed to the deadline, and it looked opportunistic and sloppy. His words, not mine. The internet responded. ChatGPT uninstalls jumped 295% in a single day. Over 1.5 million people have taken some form of action. And yes, Claude jumped to the #1 on the App Store. I'm not saying that's karma, but if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck. Now, OpenAI did go back and say they amended their Pentagon agreement, adding explicit language that the AI shall not be used for domestic surveillance. Damage control, essentially. Except most critics aren't buying it. The full contract still has not been released publicly, and at least one former Army general said flatly he does not believe the protected language actually exists and that OpenAI is faking it. So they got caught, did a PR scramble, and people still don't trust them. Shocking, I know. Worth naming, Google, Amazon, and Meta all have Pentagon contracts too. This is an industry-wide thing. OpenAI just did it loudly right after another company got punished for saying no. So the company that protected Americans from surveillance got labeled a national security threat. But the company that said, sure, whatever you need, is now the trusted partner. Makes it seem very much like what's safe for us isn't what's safe for them. Cool. Yeah, cool. If any of this has you fired up, good, it should. For Epstein, the DOJ document library is at justice.gov/Epstein. You can go look and contact your representatives about the lack of USA charges. For the AI situation, search Quit GPT if you want to vote with your wallet. Whatever you decide is up to you. As always, I just want to help people stay informed with current actual facts. And also, if this show seems a little different, it's because I jumped to Claude and it organizes a little bit different than what I'm used to. We're still working. Again, it's not the thing. It's how you use the thing. Okay, so now we've seen the pattern. We've named it. We've acknowledged it. How do we change it? Well, the pattern's not going to stop on its own. It doesn't stop because one generation is suddenly going to be smarter and more involved and just not do it subconsciously. It's going to stop when anybody decides to interrupt it. Kind of like generational trauma. Somebody has to throw up their hands and say, nope, we're not going to pass this one down. So here's a question I want to leave you with. Where are you on the assembly line right now? Are you still a cog that's, using the thing? Or are you part of the machine that's going to attack the thing? What new thing are you side-eyeing that you haven't actually taken 5 minutes to understand? What are you calling dangerous that might be different? Now, don't get me wrong. This is not about throwing discernment out the window. I'm not saying hand your 5-year-old Grand Theft Auto. Technology deserves some scrutiny, and parents need to adjust things to age appropriate levels. But scrutiny and panic are not the same thing. Guardrails don't stop the car. They just stop it from flying over the cliff. Again, it's not about the thing itself. It's about how the thing gets used. Video games at their core aren't a bad thing. But if they're used as a replacement for a teacher or a parent or a conversation, that's not the game's fault. It's the same with AI. AI at its base is not a problem. There's some environmental concerns that need addressed, and people trying to basically use AI to replace their own thinking. That's worth watching. But the concern is never really about the thing. It's about how we use it. So this week, if you ever feel the urge to say kids these days, or honestly, our favorite back in the day, uphill both ways, just pause. A theme of mine that I've always used is the smartest words you can ever utter are "I don't know." Because there's nothing wrong with not knowing. And the best question to ever ask is, "I don't understand. Can you show me?" Get curious for 5 minutes before you get judgmental. It sounds small. It is small. But as you know, like with small wins, small things compound. It's kind of the whole point of my show. All right, people, it's time for Shuffle Happens. Take a nice, deep, relaxing, grounding breath. This week's card is the Two of Wands. And as always, we're doing my Sacred Kingdom. When you look at this card, the first thing you notice is the darkness. The scene is dim, quiet, almost still. Stone steps lead up to a golden archway, and through that doorway, there's a light, warm, glowing. Fog curls out from the desk's hold, like the space between worlds is breathing and exhaling. Standing at the edge of that doorway is a woman. Her long hair is caught in the wind, lifting and moving, like there's a gentle breeze blowing. Her dress flows with the same wind, soft and alive. She's facing the door. She can see through to the other side. Trees, light, the suggestion of something open and alive waiting for her. The door is open. The light is on. She just has to take that first step in. Upright, the Two of Wands is about vision, future planning, standing at the edge of everything you know and choosing to look forward instead of back. There's a boldness to this card. Not the loud, crashing boldness of someone charging in without thinking, but the quiet, grounded courage of someone who has to look at the horizon and decide to walk toward it anyway. It's fire energy, expansive energy, the energy of someone who's ready. Reversed, however, this card asks a harder question. What are you waiting for? Is it that you're not ready? Or is it that you're afraid you won't be enough for what's on the other side? There's a difference between needing more time and using time as a hiding place. The reversed Two of Wands gently, but firmly, asks you to figure out which one is true for you. And that's why this card is perfect for today. Every generation that panicked about the one coming up behind them was standing at a doorway like this one. They could see the light on the other side. They could feel that gentle wind. And they chose to stand on the steps and tell the person ahead of them that the door was dangerous, that the light was suspicious, and that the fog meant something was wrong. The Two of Wands asks us to be different, to look at what's changing, what's coming, what's new, to choose curiosity over fear, to walk through the door, not to block it. The door is open, my friends. The light is on. Where in your life are you standing on those steps? And what would it feel like to just take a deep breath and walk through? All right, coffee crew. Oh, I like that. Maybe we'll use that in the future. Coffee crew. The cycle of blame is old. So old. And it's never once actually protected anyone from the thing that they're afraid of. Rap music's still around. Rock music's still around. Video games are still around. It just made each generation a little more certain that they were the last ones that got it right. Right before the next generation comes along and gets it right in a different way. You're not ruining anything. You never were. And the generation coming up behind you, they're not ruining anything either. They're doing what every generation has done, making the world their own, adjusting it to their times. Let them. We can be the ones that interrupt that pattern. Not but because we're naive, not because we think everything new is automatically good, but because we've seen enough of history to know that fear, dressed up as wisdom, is just fear. That maybe if we work with the new thing instead of against it, maybe we can help make it better instead of just automatically trying to shut it down. So this week, share a moment where you choose curiosity over judgment. Tag the show, email me, let me know, come sit at the table. And if you've been enjoying your coffee here and are part of my coffee crew, please spread the word. I'm almost to 1,000 downloads. So I would love if we could have more friends that come and pull up a chair. As always, feed the algorithm. If you're an Apple, you can leave a review, 5 stars if you want my opinion, maybe. Tell a friend. It matters more than you know. And as always, friends, keep your stitches sassy, your coffee strong, and your spirit grounded.